Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Cape Crusader Cody, and we're keeping it geekly with our returning guest, Alex Breen, excuse me there. We're here to break down Devour, a one-shot horror manga. I had the chance to read this. This thing was dark, gruesome, and there was some crazy twist that I feel like I've read a lot of horror by this point, and I was really surprised by just where you took this. So excited to dive into it, but first and foremost, Alex, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing fantastic. For a first Kickstarter launch, which this is my first, I had no idea what to expect, but, for all the horror stories I've heard about from so many different people, like it's felt like a really solid day. And, honestly, and I'm not saying this just because I'm on this show, but I remember we had a great conversation a couple years ago. Couldn't have thought of someone better to cap off day one with.
Stop it. No, I appreciate that. And memory serves me correctly, it was From Within, a fighting book. So it's interesting to see you pivot to horror. What was your reasoning for that? Like, why did you come to a horror genre as opposed to maybe exploring more of the fighting?
Yeah, sure thing. So horror is one of those things where, and maybe this is common for people, but like I was kind of a little bit of a sheltered kid, mostly watched a lot of cartoons around like 11, 12, even up to that point. Didn't watch like a lot of movies. Mm-hmm. And then somewhere along the lines, I was like hanging out with some friends and got exposed to horror, was completely terrified by it. But that like became morbid fascination. So I've become a horror junkie ever since like the age of like 12, 11. Like there was a summer where I think I was like, shown Terminator, Alien, and Nightmare on Elm Street in the span of like, and that did number on me.
You was eating good. You was eating good. Yeah, I remember I had to have been a toddler. There's pictures of me as a kid dressed up as Chucky for Halloween to give you an idea of how young I was. But I remember being horrifically young and being exposed to Child's Play, and just like thinking back now as an adult, 34, 3 kids of my own, it's like I don't know if I would let them watch that. Like it's like I don't know, but it's like I think I turned out somewhat okay, right? Like
well, they usually say that the horror fans are usually some of the calmest people around, just because they're exposed to some of the craziest shit time and time again. So
absolutely,
I think that tracks.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Devour. This was such an interesting read. Once again, I cannot commend you enough on like just the breadcrumbs you were able to build within, the first couple of pages, and then where you took the story. So some really cool points I'd like to kind of just talk about too is like the paneling, the art in this. There was some really cool spins on it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, for starters, the artist is Marcus Jimenez. I've worked with Marcus before on a Huntress fan comic, actually, that I just like threw up on the Twitter a few years ago. And, Marcus is a great friend of mine. So, but Devour is, like you said, a one-shot horror manga. It's basically about a demon hunter that tracks down this monster into a hospital. The monster can feed on your worst fears. Mm-hmm. This hospital's kind of like at this like hub point between the dream world and the real world, where, the hunter of course has to fight through a horde of demons, as one does, but they just also have Monday. Yeah, absolutely. But where things get a little different with this particular assignment is that the environment shifts on a whim. So, the closer he's getting to this monster, the more the monster can tap into his psyche and in turn, just pull out like some of his biggest nightmares to use on him. So, it becomes a lot more of like a cat and mouse game between the predator and prey.
So we have our good friend Joe over on YouTube saying, hey everyone, great seeing Alex on here, already backed it. We'd love to see you, Joe. I had an awesome time with our last interview. Feel free to reach out if you have anything else in the works as well. And speaking of backing, here is the link for everyone to check out the campaign we're talking about. We're going to do a little bit of a deeper look here in just a few moments, but feel free to check it out back if you're able to. If not, put it on Facebook or Twitter. Word of mouth costs you absolutely nothing. So an awesome protagonist. Can you tell us a little bit of the inspiration behind his character?
Absolutely. Well, I think the part of this is obvious is that the inspiration came from Blade. And so the scenario was kind of like, what if Blade was having to deal with a Freddy Krueger type of villain? Because, Blade normally can just, take stuff out, stab, and, usually they go poof, with the exception of like Blade 2, if you guys have seen that flick. But, dealing with something that's a little bit more cerebral, something that could, challenge the main character in ways that he's not used to dealing with, and, playing certain things very close to his vest, because if certain things got out, this creature would absolutely tear him apart. Just kind of dealing with more of a tactical side was a lot of the main inspirations. It's Blade and meets Nightmare on Elm Street is the easiest selling point I tend to tell people with this particular project.
I really felt the way you went about writing him added so many different layers, and I felt like it added a lot more of a suspenseful feeling to it too. Just kind of having that lingering fear of like, is this going to happen, or is he going to be able to hold it together? What's going to happen? Was it challenging to write this genre, or has this been something, that you've been brewing up for quite some time?
I think it's been a long time coming. It's just been waiting for like what the right thing was. So, the best part of this story, and this isn't a spoiler or anything, but I love playing with environmental storytelling. So like I was the guy who would, if you're familiar with Resident Evil, like the first couple in particular, where you would have these like decrepit mansions or these destroyed cities with all the little environmental details. Like I love just kind of taking some time to have Vincent, the main character, kind of explore these desolate areas, and kind of how it felt so isolating, but it also sort of felt like anything was just waiting around the corner ready to strike. So I was feeding Marcus all kinds of environmental ideas. Oh, what if we do this in this panel? What if we do this? And I had a blast coming up with that element in particular.
So what about a hospital in particular like drew you to that?
Well, I think the easiest thing with hospitals is another horror movie I was easily traumatized by was Halloween 2. But while in that story, that is, a single person being chased around in a desolate, hospital, or at least a low-staffed hospital. I like the idea of you coming into a hospital, you're trying to look for something, and it's just there's something lurking around waiting for you. So you're having to, instead of run from it, you're going towards the danger in this case. And there's something kind of messed up about hospitals. They're supposed to be there to help people. Just there's no one who can help you in this particular situation.
I think that's a really interesting perspective on it, to be in a place that's supposed to symbolize healing, and it's like the complete darkest opposite possible. You mentioned a lot of like playing with the environment, and I really, really loved how it was portrayed in the comic. I mentioned it earlier. Some of this paneling was just outrageous. There was the one in particular where like I don't know what you call it, the bleed on the edge, like where it was just like dark, like I don't know, it's like spiral,
like the
looking,
shadows creeping up.
Yes, like dude, it was insane. There was another part where it's like this panel inside of a panel, like character design that was like panelception. I was like, dude, this is like some next level stuff. How did the script process work between you and the artist?
Yeah, so the easiest thing was, at least from my scripting side, I do full script. So I usually have an outline of like, the idea, and then I break it down to pages, break it down to panels, so on and so forth. I actually, for this one, because Marcus and I, this is probably the most collaborative story I've done yet in comics. So, I was feeding him even soundtracks where it's like these pages, this is kind of the song.
I love that.
The vibe I'm going for with this particular moment. So I was pulling from all kinds of different stuff for that. But then, Marcus would come back with pages, and then oftentimes we'd have a conversation, not with every page, but there'd be some where it's like, okay, the script says this, but actually it's cooler if we go in this direction. And then, bounces that off of me. And then maybe I might have another idea to be like, oh yeah, and then let's do this on top of it. So there was, especially in the second half, when you're talking about that panelception moment, definitely, I don't necessarily want to show people that page.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you get there, that's the byproduct of that. I wouldn't have the courage to just throw that to someone raw who is like, hey, this is my first collaboration. But like Marcus and I are friends, so like it's very easy for me to kind of do a page that's like, this is gonna be a challenge, but hey, let's talk it through and we'll make this work. It'll be really cool.
Did I coin that term good? The panelception? Do you think that fit it properly?
I like it.
I first on Keeping It Geekly. So yes, I mean, everything about this book was just phenomenal from start to finish. The one shot, I mean, so we're not going to see anything else spin off of this, or do you have any other maybe horror related projects in the future that you're going to be knocking out?
Oh, for this one in particular, it is kind of built for there to be returning adventures. I think a good idea of it is, as long as it's successful, of course, and it funds, but this is kind of designed to be something where I could come back to with Marcus as a one shot and be like, here's the next adventure. It's kind of playing with a different horror element, kind of like, and I'm not on this level, I'll be upfront, but it's a good thing to strive for. Brubaker's my favorite writer. I love what he does with Reckless, where like you can go into just about any of the Reckless stories, read it out of order, and there's stuff for you if you read it in order, but there's nothing stopping you from reading the last book first and the first book last. And that's the kind of vibe that I want to go for with Devour. I thought, if I'm being especially honest from a business perspective, I thought it was a much more fair ask of people to back me if it's like, you get the completed story here. If this is all this is, you have the completed comic. Now, hopefully I get to make more, but if this is all it is, you're not hanging out waiting for that next thing. So I wanted to, reward people for taking a chance on me for this.
So let's go ahead, speaking of rewards, pull up the Kickstarter and check out what all the hype is about. While I'm pulling this up, do me a favor, tell me a little bit about those soundtracks. I think that is such an interesting part of the collaboration process that I don't really get to talk about too much. So like, what were those songs?
Sure. So you know what? Let me pull up a couple. I won't be able to like do the links, but I'll see if I can have that handy. A couple that come to mind is Resident Evil, like the older soundtracks of like I think Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, if you're familiar with that one, has some really haunting soundtracks. Code Veronica has like these kind of like almost operatic type of horror for like some of the more intense action beats. So like Resident Evil was a very easy point for that. John Carpenter's The Fog with like some synth music as Vincent is like coming into that first scene where he's like riding on his like motorcycle. Like I had like The Fog in the back of my head for that. There's a really intense, and this is maybe a little bit more of like a, I guess maybe not a deeper cut if I'm talking about like video game soundtracks, but like there is like a moment in Nightmare on Elm Street 5 where like there's a track that goes like ridiculously hard for like do you remember Nightmare on Elm Street 5 where there's like Alice is like this like conjoined fetus with Freddy for like a minute?
Think so. That sounds so cool though.
It's like one of the wildest practical effects I've ever seen. It's amazing. And the music goes ridiculously hard for that beat. So there's a part in the story where I'm like, yeah, I want that feeling where it just feels like things are just completely falling to pieces. So
I listened to Interstellar, the Hans Zimmerman, like the, you have to know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to do it out loud. But like whenever I need to concentrate, like I'll put like an hour loop of just that. And it's insane what some of these OST tracks from video games and movies can do, because like they're created to invoke emotion. So it's like, I mean, maybe it's not the emotion of writing, a manga or a comic or editing a video, but it's like it still has that same premise where it brings out these emotions, I feel. And a lot of times I'm trying to chase a particular emotion for a scene, so music can be an enhancement to it. It's just the only thing for me is I can't listen to music that has dialogue. Yeah. That you start focusing on the words.
Yeah, especially if it's something I like, then it's like, oh, I'm just going to listen for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden my concentration's gone. So what are we looking at here? These interiors are gorgeous. Are these demons? Are these monsters? What type of creatures is our protagonist fighting? Yeah, so these particular ones are a few very unfortunate hospital staff, what's left of them after their encounter with the dream demon, and its influence is spreading over the waking world, and this is some of the effects you're seeing of that.
And he's using a really interesting weapon. What's this called right here, this blade?
I truthfully, the exact blade, the name escapes me at the moment, but the easiest reference point was something akin to, you remember Riddick, where he had
oh my god, Pitch Black is like one of my favorite movies. Such a badass movie. And he like shaves his head with it, dude. It's brutal.
Yeah. So that kind of seemed like a cool, like agile type of weapon for a character to use, and because I mean swords are cool, but like that's something that's played out a lot for that type of archetype. So
did you choose you chose it for like the more close combat like encounters?
Exactly.
Cool. And getting up close and personal is even more brutal, so we love to see it. So we have our baddie of the issue right here. Tell us a little bit about this guy. This guy is terrifying.
Yeah, Lucian is an absolute sadist. So he enjoys just sort of picking and prodding at people's worst fears for the fun of it. He likes to play with his food, so to speak. So there's a character you see at the beginning of pages that they meet a pretty rough fate because of some of the things that he does. But he's trying to gain more of a foothold over the real world, and that's a lot of what we're seeing play out. So he's a really fun force to throw up against Vincent, our lead protagonist. For that reason.
Is he based off of like any like demons from like I don't know, like demons from our like culture or different cultures, or where did this creature's creation come from?
No, the easiest reference point for this one's definitely it's a Freddy Krueger inspired type of demon for this one. Though that pose, though I remember this reference image, Marcus and I were talking about it. I forget, you watch wrestling, right?
Yeah. Well, old Attitude Era, so none of the new stuff. Only the good stuff.
There's a really cool Undertaker image of like, there's a WrestleMania entrance of like him coming out in a hood and all these hands just kind of reaching out to touch him. That was one of the inspirations for this.
That's so cool. Shot. I love that. Yeah, when I was
definitely look it up later. It's cool.
I was a little hood rat when I was a kid. I was Stone Cold Steve Austin. You couldn't tell me anything else. I had the old wrestling soundtrack with the glass break on it. I'd play it all the time. Oh my god, I would have been skin bald if I could have.
You ever try for Halloween? Like at least do the vest and everything?
I should. I've been wanting to get some Stone Cold shirts too. I love them. Like the skull with the flames. Like, dude, the rattlesnake, man, let's go. So right here are some of the rewards. We have digital copies coming in at $5 for a PDF. The physical at $10 for the standard cover. Awesome price on that. We have the physical cover and a mini print at $15. Then we have the Angela Wu variant at $15. This is a gorgeous cover. This is the one that was on the image slideshow. So if you guys love that, $15 and it can be yours. You can get the main cover and the variant combo at $20, and then get both of those with the print at $25. We have Marcus coming in hot with a black and white commission for $175. And this is gorgeous. I remember seeing his time lapse of the Space Ghost, and it was insane. This thing with color is just mind blowing, but it is just as gorgeous black and white as well. And then this is a really cool thing too. So adopt a page, $200. What's included in this? Do they get like a little print or a thing in the back of the book? How's this work?
Yeah, sure thing. So this is just an extra special thank you page where if there's a page in the previews, for instance, that like, I really vibe with this particular page or something, you can do this, and that effectively pays for the cost, like the entire production cost of that page. We're talking the art and the letters, everything with that. Plus you end up getting a digital copy. Of course, you can also pick a copy of your of one of the comics that you're choosing, so you get a little something else extra for that. So it's a little way of, if someone really believes in this project, really wants to throw a little extra and really help get this thing over the top, that's something there for them.
And that is everything in its entirety, guys. Be sure to check out the link right here. We would love to see you back and help this fun day one, but if you're unable to back, put this on Facebook and Twitter. Word of mouth costs you absolutely nothing. Alex, after going through its campaign, what would you like to say to anyone who might be on the fence about backing You know, if they're kind of just, they need that little push, what would you say to them?
Well, if you are someone who was obsessed with like Nightmare on Elm Street, like me as a teenager, we're just so morbidly curious with like the dreamlike visuals and like how things can just turn on a dime from being serene into just like nightmare fuel, and you like a little action on the side with it, then I think this is the comic for you.
And I think you nailed it too. After reading it, I definitely get the Freddy vibe. The more you talk about it, the more I like see it and can reflect upon it. And I think you were able to balance it just perfectly. Now, you've been on the show before, you know the drill. We always ask a piece of advice and then what you're up to outside of creating. So for anyone looking to balance a different genre, they've already done one, they're looking to dive into a different one. What would be your biggest piece of advice to help them, do that successfully?
Well, I think the simplest thing is, and this is always easier said than done with creativity, but have fun. Like, don't overthink it. At least for the first draft purpose, just get it out there. And, other drafts are for introspection and for refinement. But for that first one, just let it rip. If you're doing like horror, comedy, whatever, just, write it to the best of your ability, have fun. And then, later on, you can be more critical with it and get it up to snuff. But, I think we beat ourselves up too much with that first draft.
In the first draft, usually, you just have to get it out. There's edits for a reason. It can be difficult. I am currently writing a couple scripts, and it is challenging sometimes. When you get the free time, you think about it all day long, then you get there, and it's like, well, how do I start? How do I begin? I recently deactivated my Facebook and my Instagram in an effort to eliminate outside distractions so I could force myself to like do, because sometimes it'll be like, all right, well, I need to Google this real quick to make sure I'm using this word properly, or see if there's a different word so I'm not using two similar words in this, same paragraph. And it's like, then it's like, okay, well, I got a notification. What is this? And it's like, I can't do my ADHD just does not allow me to do it. So, man, I love that. I think that's some awesome advice. So what are you up to outside of creating comics? What video games are you playing? What TV shows are you watching? What books are you reading?
Yeah, sure thing. So as far as video games go, I just started Alan Wake, which I guess is kind of fitting. Not the second one. I need to get up to that.
Didn't that just get remastered? One of them just got a big remaster, I think. Yeah. Yeah,
I just started playing through the remastered first one. It's really good so far. Remedy Games is a really solid developer, and have you ever played Alan Wake or Max Payne?
I've played all three Max Paynes. I was not a huge fan, hope people don't burn me at the stake for this, but not a huge fan of the third one. I thought it was okay, but not nearly as good as the second one. So maybe it's because like I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
No worries, dude. I haven't played the third one yet, actually. I just beat the second one last year. But
they did a really cool approach. I think he's bald. He's like middle-aged now. He got a little bit of a beer gut. So I love when the characters grow with the series like that. It just, I don't know. I like the first two better, I guess.
No, that's fair. If you happen to like Max Payne 1 and 2 anyway, there's a pretty cheeky reference to Max Payne inside of Alan Wake that maybe, like, literally they had the voice actor come in and read a few lines. That was pretty great.
Oh, that's cool.
Passed recently, too.
I want to say I played one of them. That's like where you have the recorder in the flashlight?
Kind of. It's like a manuscript kind of thing.
Okay, maybe not. But I don't know. Is it similar to Outlast?
Not quite in this one. It's like
I'm thinking of a totally different game then.
Yeah, maybe you're thinking of Control. I haven't played a lot of Remedy outside of Max Payne, to be completely honest.
Yeah, man, Helldivers has been on my plate.
Yeah, that's a great game too.
Yes. I've been actually playing a lot of GTA 5 too, just because I had it, and it's like, well, I got it. I was a splurge buy. I'm very I was. I'd be like at a game store. I'm like, oh, $20, brand new PS5. Like, let me buy it. And then it just collects dust. So I'm like, I'm going to play this. I'm going to force myself to work through my backlog. I really need to get back into Diablo 4. I think I got to Act 4 and then I put it down for a little bit. I think Spider-Man 2 came out like right when I was trying to beat it. So have you got a PS5 or no?
Yeah, I do. I haven't played Spider-Man 2 yet. I actually still need to play Miles Morales, to be honest.
Oh my, that's such a. It doesn't even matter that game's only 8 hours long. It's such a good experience.
Honestly, I kind of like that there's some shorter video games out there because like my first 2 months of the year, because I just had busy season at work and like I couldn't do a whole lot. So a lot of my time was spent playing Baldur's Gate 3. And it's
I need to play that.
It's great, but it's too big. That's my take. It's too big of a game. Like I love Resident Evil games that are like 8 to 12 hours. Give me some more tailored experiences.
Outside of creating comics, outside of talking about what you're up to, we're both fellow Yetis. Tell me a little bit about your end with Comic Book Yeti. You handle some interviewings. Like how does that go for you? Like what's your process like when you do it?
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, I suppose I have two different types of Yeti interviews. So the simple one is the everyday, okay, this is a written interview. And, I do a Google Drive set of questions and I send those over. And that's a good one. Don't get me wrong. Like that's a fun one because, there's all kinds of cool new stuff I'm exposed to. Mm-hmm. But the other one that's wild for me, and you probably have seen me do some of this, but for conventions, I will bring a recorder out and I will have kind of more of a loose conversation with the person. Then I end up transcribing that into being a written interview. How
long does that take? That's what I'm curious about. Like you are
a very long time.
You are a champion for doing it. Because that's the one thing I love doing live interviews, but I don't have the time to transcribe. That's my biggest thing. So like when you do it, I'm like, dude, this dude's pumping them out left and right. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, it kind of comes out of two reasons. One, I figure con audio is bad. And I don't have the experience with audio to, be comfortable just doing that and making that work. The other thing that tends to work out in my favor when I do that is that, because we're talking rather loosely, sometimes someone will say something like, I shouldn't have said that, whatever it is. Like I announced something a little too early or whatever. And it's like, no worries, it's written. So I end up going back and fixing it. And, unlike audio or video where you would notice a cut probably, with written, you would never know.
There's a thing I'll have to look. I remember doing an interview at Fantasticon with Devin R. Scott, which was really cool. It was my first live, I did interviewing at that point for a year, just every day, running ragged. And I remember I went to this con, it was my first live interview, and I was like, this is cool. This is nice. Like, I'm jealous. You get to do it so much. But where do you edit? You do Adobe Premiere, or what do you use?
I probably should do Adobe Premiere.
Because there's a thing.
Marcus, let me know about it.
There's a thing you could drop on the sound clip that will clear out the background noise and amplify it a little bit better. And I remember because I ran through the same issue with Devin. It's just you have that so much background noise that it's hard to target that. But this thing, I'll have to ask Kurt from Two Geeks Talking, because he's the one who told me about it. So Kurt, if you're watching, just DM it to us already. Do it now. But I'll have to get that to you because that might be useful to you. I mean,
yeah, might be a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Right now I feed it through Rev, which is a transcription service. And I usually do that over the con weekends so that when I'm back and I'm wiped out,
I'm on to you now. I thought you were doing it by hand. I thought you were just here 8 hours a day, just
Well, I will tell you, my first 2 or 3, that's what I did.
Oh my God.
And I immediately realized I can't do that again.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That I cannot do it by hand. Some of those subscriptions can be expensive, but hopefully you found a good one that is working for you. Alex, before we let you go, where can everyone find you?
Absolutely. So you can find me most commonly on Twitter. It's __Breen, my last name. Also, should be alex.breen on Blue Sky, because there weren't a bunch of people with my name for that one. And yeah, that's honestly the only ones I really actively put some effort into. I'm sure I have an Instagram. You can follow me there if you want. I don't use it, to be honest with you, so I wouldn't recommend it.
I feel so bad. I don't use mine very much either, and I'll have people every platform I'm on, I'll honestly get a DM asking for a show, and I'll have people who DM me from months ago, and I get on there bi-yearly, and I'm like, oh, your campaign's done, I'm so sorry. Oof. But guys, make sure to check out his socials. We'll have those updated in the YouTube description down below. Appreciate everyone stopping in and hanging out with us on this lovely Monday night. I hope you're all having a fantastic night, but most importantly, keep it geekly.